Hey everyone, Mr. Spader here. Here to talk to you this week, or today I should say, about energy, kinetic energy and potential energy. Now, we've talked about these before in the past when we were talking about Newton's laws. Kinetic energy is the energy of something in motion, and potential energy is the energy of something at rest. So, the more mass an object has, the more potential energy it has when it's not moving. And that's because once it starts moving, it can have a heck of a lot more energy according to Newton's second law. All right? So when we talk about potential and kinetic energy, once an object starts moving, that is, it's been acted upon by an outside force, right? An unbalanced force according to Newton's first law, that potential energy transforms into kinetic energy. And that's a really important idea because energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. Now, that transfer can happen in a number of different ways. We could transfer via heat, like friction, right? When you rub your hands together, that energy is being transferred and creating heat. You could create sound. Sound is energy. In fact, it's energy that's made the molecules in the air bounce back and forth. And when your ear gets those molecules bouncing back and forth, you hear things. The other thing is that it can be transferred into the energy of motion, or you can actually get that kinetic energy to keep creating more kinetic energy along the way. So, the other thing that can happen is that this energy can be a force. Remember, a force is a push or a pull. So this activity that I'm asking you guys to do, we're going to do it exactly how you could do it at home. Change just a few things if you'd like. So what I've done here to help you out is I've filled my sink with water. Okay? Now, the questions on your activity says that you need to drop 3 objects of different masses into a standing body of water. Now, this is a heck of a lot easier if you've got like a river or a pond or a stream nearby that you can throw rocks into. Okay? If you're going to drop something into a sink or your bathtub at home, make sure that you ask your parents first because it can make a mess, especially the sink. Okay? I didn't want to fill the bathtub because it's right next to where Desmond sleeps. So I'm trying to not wake him up. So we have our pool of water. Now we're going to drop things of different masses. And what we want to think about is what is happening to the energy. So it also said that I want you to drop from the same height. So my first object is going to be a simple water bottle that my boys drink from. And if you notice back here, I've got a latch for my window. These latches right here are going to be the distance that I drop it from. I don't know how far it is. I didn't measure, but I know that I'm going to go like this, pull it out, and drop, and we'll see what happens. You guys will just see the drop taking place so that we can see what this does to the water. So this bottle is completely empty. There's nothing inside of it. This is probably the least massive thing that I could drop. So I'm going to take it out from here, and we'll see what kind of splash it makes. Okay? 2 things you should have noticed. 1, we saw some water shoot up into the air. The second, you can see that the liquid is actually vibrating back and forth, okay? You know these as waves. Waves are how we see kinetic energy, okay? Energy is transferred in waves. So the more energy that you transfer, the bigger the wave is. Now, when you talk about a tsunami, literally, it is so much energy in the ocean that it pushes the entire ocean for miles and miles and miles up into the air, sometimes hundreds of feet. The same can be true of an earthquake, in fact. If you get above like a 7.5 on the Richter scale for an earthquake, you'll actually see the land do this, which is really, really neat. So 3 varying masses. What I'm going to do to get a different mass is I'm just going to take this bottle right here. I'm going to fill it up about halfway. So we're making it more massive. Therefore, it should have more potential energy. And it should turn into kinetic energy when I let it go, thanks to the outside force of gravity pulling me down. Now, because we have more potential energy, it's going to create more kinetic energy, which means, in theory, more energy should be transferred to the liquid. So that means we should get, hopefully, a bigger splash. Sure enough. Also notice the waves. The waves are going to be going for longer and longer and longer because the energy is just bouncing back and forth from the sides of the sink. So I'm going to actually dump this out right now, because I did ask for 3 objects, and that was what we consider the medium object. It's also a good idea to have towels around in case you start making a mess here. This is same water bottle filled all the way to the brim. Okay? So this is the most massive. It has the most inertia. It has the most potential energy. When I drop it, it should have the most kinetic energy as well, right? Because all that potential energy transforms into kinetic energy. So your prediction would be, we'll see a bigger splash in the air, maybe go a longer distance, and maybe see the waves bigger and last longer. So let's see if that prediction is correct. Thank goodness my wife isn't here, because the floor is soaking wet. Over there is soaking wet. Even got my crock pot soaking wet. So, and look, the waves are actually still moving in the sink, which is kind of crazy to think about. And it probably will continue to do so for some time. So when we start talking about potential and kinetic energy, we're really talking about, is something moving or is it not? And what does it take to make that thing get moving? Well, it takes a force, a push or a pull, to make something keep moving. Now, in outer space, where we don't have gravity, we don't have a lot of friction, if we start moving, we're just going to keep going in that direction forever and always until something stops us, probably like a planet or a black hole or a star or something like that, maybe a moon, etc., etc. So potential energy, you have the potential of movement, the potential of transferring energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. So we can have a lot of fun with kinetic energy. When you guys started writing your stories for Miss Rolfs a little while ago, I too started writing a story. And one of the things that happens in my story is there's a superpower that people can have. It's kind of like a magic spell of sorts that actually uses kinetic energy. And basically, people can see and feel energy after things have collided, and kind of manifest it, like suck it into themselves and shoot it out as their own blasts. So it was a neat idea that I had, because I was trying to keep something very scientific, keep it as real as possible. And so in that story, let's say 2 small things crash together. I can absorb a little bit of that energy and use it. If 2 large things crash together, I can absorb a heck of a lot more energy and use it to do cooler stuff. Kind of like if you think about like Iron Man's repulsor blasts, the powers kind of act like that. And if you're also into this type of idea of motion, there's a really cool book series out called Mistborn. Mistborn is written by the same guy who wrote the Skyward book that I'm reading now for the independent reading side of things. And basically, you can swallow metal, and different types of metal give you different powers. One of them is the power of pushing and pulling using kinetics. So like if I take one type of metal and I burn it in my stomach, it allows me to pull metal towards me. Of course, if that metal is heavier than I am, if it has more mass than I do, I get pulled toward that metal. Okay? And the opposite is true with a different metal that you burn inside your stomach, where if I wanted to push myself away from something or push something away from me, I could push a coin away from me because it has less mass than me. Whereas if I wanted to push a refrigerator or a car away from me, I couldn't do that because it has more mass than me. So instead, I would push off of it and it would send me flying backwards. Really cool story and a really neat idea for superpowers based off of that magic system. I highly recommend it. It's called Mistborn. There are currently 6 books. I think he's working on a 7th now. The first 3 books are kind of like fantasy. The second 3 books are kind of like this weird Western / steampunkish stuff. I think you guys will get a real kick out of it. Anyway, if you have any questions about potential or kinetic energy, we're going to look at it today in class. And then you can contact me directly with any further questions. All right, we'll see you soon.